It was a quiet afternoon on the ranch. The sun was bright and a soft breeze rustled through the grass. The rancher was walking along the fence line, checking the animals and making sure everything was in order. Life on the ranch was simple but hard. Every day brought its own work and challenges, and he had learned to handle them with patience and persistence. There was a certain peace in this rhythm, the kind that comes from doing honest work and living close to the land. As he moved through the fields, he heard something unusual. At first, it was just a faint sound in the distance, like metal scraping against metal. But then the sound grew louder, sharper, more urgent. He turned his head toward the road that cut through the outskirts of the property, and his heart skipped a beat. There, just beyond the trees, a car had crashed. The vehicle was twisted and broken, smoke rising from under the hood, and the way it was positioned made it clear it had flipped over. Without thinking twice, the rancher ran toward the scene. His boots sank into the soft earth and his hands brushed against the fence as he sprinted. He didn't know who was inside the car. He didn't know if anyone could still be alive. All he knew was that someone needed help and he had to act fast. When he reached the wreck, he could see the driver trapped inside. The man was slumped over, barely moving, and there were cuts on his face. Glass from the shattered windshield sparkled in the sunlight, scattered across the road and the car. The rancher didn't panic. He had grown up handling difficult situations, from helping injured animals to dealing with unexpected problems on the farm. He took a deep breath, wiped the sweat from his brow, and began assessing what he could do. The car door was jammed. It wouldn't open no matter how hard he pushed. He knew time was critical. He grabbed a heavy branch from nearby and used it to pry open the frame, careful not to make the situation worse. The driver groaned, a sound that made the rancher's heart tighten, but it also fueled his determination. Step by step he worked, not letting fear or doubt stop him. Finally, the door gave way. The rancher reached inside, speaking to the man in calm, reassuring tones. "It's okay, you're safe now. Just hang on," he said. He carefully pulled the driver out, making sure not to jostle him too much. The man's eyes fluttered open for a moment, confused and in pain, but he was alive. The rancher laid him gently on the grass, trying to make him as comfortable as possible. While waiting for help, the rancher checked for other injuries. There were cuts and bruises, and the man's breathing was uneven. The rancher did what he could, using his shirt to stop minor bleeding and speaking words of encouragement. He didn't know who this man was. He didn't care about titles, money, or status. All he knew was that someone needed him, and he was the only one there who could help right now. Minutes felt like hours, but soon he heard the distant wail of sirens. Help was on the way. Emergency vehicles arrived, and the rancher stepped back, letting trained professionals take over. He gave them all the details, explaining how he had found the man and what he had done to help. The paramedics nodded with respect, impressed by his quick thinking and bravery. But the rancher didn't stay for praise. He knew his job wasn't done yet, but this part of it, the saving of a life, was complete. As he walked back to his ranch, his mind wandered. He thought about how fragile life could be, how in a single moment everything could change. One moment the world felt calm and ordinary. The next it could be a disaster waiting to happen. He shook his head, not in regret, but in awe of how quickly life could demand courage, and how important it was to act without hesitation when someone's safety depended on you. He returned to his animals, checking them one by one. The cows were grazing quietly and the horses nickered as he approached. For a moment, the chaos of the crash felt like a distant memory. The rancher knew that saving a life wasn't about recognition or reward. It was about doing what was right. It was about responding when needed, no matter who the person was or what the consequences might be. Later that evening, as the sun began to set, he sat on the porch of his small farmhouse, sipping a cup of coffee. The day's events replayed in his mind. He felt a quiet satisfaction, not pride, but a sense that he had done what he was supposed to do. Life on the ranch was simple, but it was moments like these, moments that tested character and courage, that made it meaningful. Little did he know, the man he had rescued was not just an ordinary person. He was someone extraordinary, a man whose presence and influence extended far beyond what anyone in the quiet town could imagine. Yet the rancher did not see this. To him, he had only seen a person in need, and perhaps that was what made his actions so pure, so genuine. There were no expectations, no hope for reward, no thought of fame, just the instinct to help. the natural response of a kind and brave heart. As night fell, the rancher prepared for the next day's work. The animals needed care, the fields needed tending, and life continued. But somewhere in a hospital not far away, a man recovered unaware of who had saved him. The rancher would remain unaware of the impact of his actions for the time being. And that in itself was part of the beauty of the story. Courage and kindness often go unnoticed, yet they hold the power to change lives in ways no one can predict. The rancher's simple life, full of routines and responsibilities, had intersected with someone else's extraordinary life. In that fleeting moment, two worlds collided and the seeds of a remarkable story were planted. He didn't know it yet, but the act of running toward a crash, risking his own safety and helping a stranger, would set in motion a chain of events that would transform more than just the life of the man he saved. It would ripple outward, touching people he had never met, reshaping futures, and reminding everyone that heroism doesn't always wear a uniform. It sometimes wears dusty boots and a calm, steady expression, moving quietly through the world, changing it one act at a time. That night, as he looked at the stars, he felt a sense of calm. The ranch was quiet, the animals were safe, and he had done what he could. He didn't need recognition or thanks. The satisfaction of knowing he had helped, of knowing he had done the right thing, was enough. Little did he know, the story was just beginning. After the crash, the rancher returned to his daily life. He went about his chores, checking on the animals, mending fences, and tending to the fields. Life on the ranch never paused, and there was always work to do. Yet in the quiet moments, he thought about the man he had rescued. Who was he? Was he going to be okay? He hoped the man would recover fully, but beyond that, he didn't dwell on it. He had done what anyone in his place would do. He had helped a person in need, and that was enough. Meanwhile, at the hospital, the man who had been trapped in the car began to regain consciousness. He was confused, his body sore from the accident, and every movement reminded him of how close he had come to losing his life. The doctors were attentive, monitoring his condition closely. They asked questions about who had found him, who had pulled him from the wreckage. The man's mind was foggy, but he remembered a strong, determined figure, someone who had acted without hesitation to save him. He felt an intense gratitude toward this stranger, though he didn't yet know his name. Days passed. The rancher, unaware of the growing attention around the rescue, continued his simple routine. Neighbors and locals had heard whispers about a man being pulled from a wrecked car, but the rancher did not seek recognition. When people came by to ask if he was involved, he simply shrugged, saying, "I just helped him out. That's all." There was no pride, no boastfulness, only a calm, steady honesty. News of the rescue slowly spread through the small town. Some called him a hero. Others simply shook their heads in admiration at his courage. It was unusual for someone in such a quiet place to act with such bravery. The community respected him for his humility, as much as for his actions. He had no desire for fame or attention. He simply returned to his work, letting the events of that day fade into memory, even as the man he saved was starting to stir in the hospital. The man, slowly recovering, began to recall the details of the accident. He remembered the crash, the pain, the fear, and then a strong hand pulling him from the car. He remembered the calm, steady voice speaking words of comfort. He remembered the bravery and selflessness of the rancher, who risked himself to save a stranger. Each memory brought a mix of awe and deep gratitude. He realized that he had been saved not by chance, but by the courage of someone completely ordinary, living a life completely different from his own. As the man's strength returned, the hospital staff helped him regain mobility. He started walking short distances, then longer ones, gradually recovering his energy. During this time, he asked repeatedly about the man who had saved him. The staff told him only what they knew: a local rancher, someone who had seen him in danger and acted without hesitation. He felt an urgent need to meet this man, to thank him personally. It wasn't just gratitude. It was admiration for someone who had acted with such courage and kindness, without expectation or reward. When the rancher finally received a call from the hospital, he was surprised. A nurse explained that the man he had rescued wanted to meet him. The rancher hesitated. He didn't see himself as someone remarkable. He had only done what anyone should do in such a situation. Still, out of respect for the man's wishes, he agreed to come. The hospital room was quiet when the rancher arrived. Sunlight filtered through the blinds, casting soft shadows on the walls. The man sitting up in his bed looked at him with eyes full of gratitude and something deeper, a recognition of bravery, selflessness, and humanity. For a moment, there was silence. Words seemed unnecessary. The rancher, modest as ever, simply nodded and offered a small smile. "I don't know what to say," the man finally said, his voice weak but steady. "You saved my life. I don't even know your name, but I will never forget what you did for me." The rancher shrugged, brushing off the compliment. "I didn't do anything special. I just saw someone in danger and I helped. Anyone else would have done the same." The man shook his head. "No, not everyone would. Not everyone would act so quickly, so calmly without thinking about themselves at all. You risked yourself to save me. That's not something ordinary." The rancher looked away, uncomfortable with the praise. He wasn't used to recognition. He had grown up learning that actions spoke louder than words, that doing the right thing mattered more than being noticed. Yet he felt a quiet satisfaction knowing the man was alive. That was reward enough for him. Over the next few days, the man and the rancher spent time talking. The billionaire, as he would soon reveal himself to be, asked questions about the rancher's life, his work, and his family. He listened intently, amazed by the simplicity, resilience, and honesty of someone living a life so different from his own. The rancher spoke modestly, focusing on the land, the animals, and the people in his community. He didn't brag or exaggerate. He spoke plainly, truthfully about the joys and struggles of his daily life. The more the man learned about the rancher, the more impressed he became. Here was someone whose life was not defined by wealth or power. Someone whose character shone through in quiet, consistent ways. He began to realize that the rancher's bravery in that moment of the crash was a reflection of a lifetime of integrity and strength. It wasn't a single heroic act. It was the natural behavior of someone who lived by principles and cared deeply for others. One afternoon, as the rancher prepared to leave the hospital, the man finally spoke the words that had been on his mind. "I want you to know something," he said, his tone serious but warm. "I'm not just anyone. I have resources and influence that most people can only imagine. What you did for me, it means more than you know. I want to make sure your actions are recognized, and I want to help you if you'll let me." The rancher was stunned. He had never expected this. He had never considered the possibility of fame, reward, or assistance. To him, helping someone in danger was simply the right thing to do. He looked at the man, uncertain, uncomfortable with the attention, but curious about what was being offered. "You don't have to do anything," he said slowly. "I'm just glad you're alive. That's enough for me." The man smiled, understanding the rancher's humility. "I know," he said, "but I believe that good deeds should be honored. Not for the sake of recognition, but because they deserve to be. You've done more than you realize, and I want to make sure your life benefits from your courage in a meaningful way." For the rancher, these words were both surprising and confusing. He had never sought wealth or status. He had never dreamed that a single act of courage could attract such attention. Yet, as he looked at the man before him, he realized that accepting help did not diminish the purity of his actions. It was simply a new chapter, one that could allow him to continue living with integrity while also making a bigger impact on the world around him. The billionaire began sharing his story, explaining his work, his life, and his travels. He spoke of how rare it was to encounter someone whose actions were completely selfless, someone who helped without expectation or consideration of personal gain. The rancher listened, fascinated, not by the wealth or fame of the man, but by his genuine gratitude and the shared understanding that kindness and courage mattered above all else. As the conversation continued, the rancher began to feel a sense of hope and possibility. He realized that this encounter, born from a moment of crisis, could open doors not for personal gain, but for the benefit of his family, his community, and the animals he cared for so deeply. It was an opportunity to extend his values, to amplify the impact of his simple, honest life. That evening, after leaving the hospital, the rancher walked back to his ranch under the setting sun. The air was warm, filled with the familiar scents of grass and soil. He reflected on the days that had passed, the man he had saved, and the surprising turn of events. He understood that life had a way of bringing unexpected moments, moments that tested character and revealed the depth of courage and kindness within a person. Though he had acted without thought of reward, He now saw that his actions could ripple outward, creating change in ways he could not have imagined. And he felt a quiet excitement, not for wealth or fame, but for the chance to make a difference in ways larger than his own farm, larger than his own life. The world had touched him in a profound way, and he had touched it back in a moment of bravery that would not be forgotten. Little did he know, the story was far from over. The man he had rescued, the billionaire, would ensure that this encounter would continue to shape lives. And through it all, the rancher would remain the same humble, hard-working man, guided by integrity, courage, and the simple truth that helping others was the most important work anyone could do. After the rancher's visit to the hospital, life returned to its usual rhythm, but something had subtly shifted. The rancher continued with his daily routines, feeding the animals, checking fences, and tending to the fields. But there was a quiet excitement in his mind that he couldn't ignore. He kept thinking about the man he had rescued, the stranger who had survived the crash because of him. He didn't know why, but he felt that the story wasn't over yet. Meanwhile, the man who had been rescued was recovering steadily. Every day his strength returned, and with it, a growing sense of gratitude and admiration for the rancher. He had spent his life surrounded by wealth and influence, accustomed to people doing things for him, often expecting something in return. But the rancher had acted differently. He had done something courageous, selfless, and pure without hesitation or hope of reward. That realization left a deep impression. The billionaire decided to visit the rancher. He wanted to meet him again, to talk about life and to offer more than just words of thanks. When he arrived, the rancher was working in the fields covered in dust and sweat, moving with the quiet rhythm of someone who had spent years mastering his craft. The sight of the rancher reminded him of something important. True courage often lived in ordinary people, far from the glare of public attention. The billionaire approached slowly, careful not to startle him. The rancher looked up, wiping his brow, and greeted him politely but cautiously. There was a mix of curiosity and modesty in his expression. He didn't know why the man had returned, but he had a feeling it wasn't for himself alone. "I wanted to see you again," the billionaire said softly, "not just to thank you, but to talk. You saved my life, and I want to make sure that I can do something meaningful in return." The rancher shook his head. "I don't need anything," he said. "I just did what anyone should do. You're alive. That's enough for me." The billionaire smiled, understanding but persistent. "I know you don't want anything. That's exactly why I respect you so much. But I also know that your life, your ranch, your work, it could be made easier, better, and it could benefit more people. You have the heart to make a difference. I want to help you do that." For the rancher, this was both surprising and confusing. He had never sought wealth or influence. He had never dreamed that a single act of courage could attract such attention. Yet, as he looked at the man before him, he realized that accepting help did not diminish the purity of his actions. It was simply an opportunity to extend his values further, to make life better for others, without compromising his integrity. Over the next few days, the billionaire and the rancher spent time walking the fields, talking about the ranch and discussing ways to improve it. The billionaire asked questions, listened carefully, and offered ideas. He suggested upgrading equipment, improving irrigation systems, and finding ways to make the ranch more sustainable. The rancher listened, impressed by the man's generosity and insight, but also cautious. He had spent his life working hard and solving problems on his own. Accepting help was not something he took lightly. As they walked among the animals, the billionaire shared stories of his travels, the people he had met, and the lessons he had learned about business and responsibility. The rancher listened quietly, absorbing the information but never losing his humility. He asked questions too about life beyond the ranch, about how people handled challenges in different worlds. These conversations created a bridge between two very different lives, one defined by simplicity and hard work, the other by complexity and influence. One afternoon, after a long walk around the property, the billionaire finally spoke directly about the future. "I want to offer you something," he said. "I want to invest in your ranch, help you expand, and make it a place that can support not just your family, but your community. You've shown courage, integrity, and a dedication to others. That's rare, and it deserves to be recognized and supported." The rancher paused, unsure how to respond. He felt the weight of the offer, and the responsibility it carried. He had never wanted wealth, but he had always wanted to improve life for those around him. Now, with this unexpected help, he had the chance to make a difference on a scale he had never imagined. "I don't want to owe anyone anything," the rancher said finally. "I've lived my life working hard, solving my own problems. I don't want to change who I am." "You won't," the billionaire assured him. "This isn't about changing you. It's about giving you tools to do more of what you already do. You're brave, honest, and hardworking. You've saved a life, and now you have the chance to save more. Through your work, through your example, through your actions." The rancher thought about this carefully. He realized that accepting help didn't make him less independent. It made it possible to amplify his impact. It wasn't about money or recognition. It was about responsibility, about using the opportunity to do more good, to reach further, and to support others in ways he couldn't have imagined on his own. Over the following weeks, the billionaire worked with the rancher to make a plan. They discussed improvements to the ranch, ways to support local schools, and projects to benefit the community. The rancher remained humble throughout, asking questions, seeking advice, and thinking carefully about each decision. He wanted to make sure that every step aligned with his values, that every action would have a meaningful impact. One morning, as they were walking through the fields, the billionaire paused and looked at the rancher. "You know," he said, "most people wouldn't do what you did. Most people would wait, hope someone else acted, or be too afraid to take risks. But you ran toward danger, not away from it. That's the mark of someone extraordinary, even if they live an ordinary life." The rancher smiled faintly, looking down at the ground. "I just did what felt right. I don't think of myself as extraordinary. I just try to do the right thing. And that's why you are," the billionaire said simply. "Extraordinary people don't think of themselves that way. They act out of courage and care, and the world is better because of it. That includes you." As the weeks passed, the rancher began to see changes on the ranch. New equipment arrived, improvements were made to the barns, and the land became more productive. He noticed the animals seemed healthier, the fields more vibrant, and the workers more motivated. The rancher felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He realized that courage, when combined with opportunity and support, could create something far greater than any individual effort. The billionaire also encouraged the rancher to consider ways to help the local community. Together, they discussed projects for schools, programs for young people, and initiatives to improve access to resources. The rancher was initially hesitant. He had never been involved in anything like this before, but he saw the value in giving back, in sharing his resources and knowledge to help others achieve more than they could alone. One evening, as the sun set over the rancher sat on the porch with the billionaire. They watched the orange light spread across the fields, illuminating the animals and the land that had been cared for so faithfully. The rancher reflected on the journey so far, from the moment of the crash to the arrival of unexpected help, and the beginning of something far bigger than himself. "I never imagined life could change this much," he said quietly. "I just helped someone in trouble, and now everything feels different." The billionaire nodded. "It's because you acted with courage and kindness. That's the moment that matters. Everything else is just the result. Your actions created a ripple, and it's reaching farther than you could have imagined." For the rancher, the lesson was clear. Life didn't reward people for appearances or ambition alone. It rewarded people who acted with integrity, who were willing to take risks for others, and who lived with humility and honesty. That single moment of courage, the moment he had pulled a man from a car wreck, had transformed his own life and would continue to shape the lives of many others. By the time the stars appeared in the night sky, the rancher felt a sense of peace he hadn't felt before. He understood that courage and kindness, when combined with opportunity, could change the course of a life, not just his own, but the lives of everyone around him. He didn't seek recognition, and he didn't need it. The joy came from knowing that he had done something good, that his actions mattered, and that he now had the chance to do even more. And so, the rancher returned to his daily life with renewed purpose. Each day he worked the land, cared for the animals, and thought about ways to give back. The billionaire remained by his side, not as a master or boss, but as a partner, guiding him, offering advice, and helping him make the most of this unexpected turn of events. The rancher realized that life's most extraordinary moments often began in the most ordinary ways. A simple act of courage had opened doors, created connections, and offered opportunities beyond anything he could have imagined. And through it all, he remained humble, grounded, and true to the values that had always guided him. Little did he know, the story was far from over. The next chapters would bring more challenges, more lessons, and more ways to touch the lives of others. But for now, he simply stood on the porch, looking out over his land, feeling grateful for the chance to make a difference, and understanding that sometimes one brave action could change everything. After weeks of working closely with the billionaire, the rancher began to notice subtle but meaningful changes in his life and on the ranch. The improvements weren't instant, but step by step, things began to look different. The barns were sturdier, the fences more secure, and the irrigation system worked more efficiently. Animals had more space, cleaner water, and better food. Even the workers seemed more motivated and hopeful, inspired by the changes they could see unfolding. For the rancher, it wasn't about luxury or wealth. It was about creating a better, healthier environment for the land and the people who depended on it. The billionaire often visited, sometimes just to talk, sometimes to observe, and sometimes to offer suggestions. He admired the rancher's humility, his ability to stay grounded despite the changes happening around him. Many people, the billionaire explained, might have been tempted by the attention or wealth, but the rancher remained true to his values. He didn't boast or ask for recognition. He worked quietly, consistently, and with purpose. One afternoon, the billionaire suggested a new project, expanding the ranch in a way that could benefit more than just the animals and the land. He proposed creating a community space where local children could learn about farming, where families could see the animals and the crops, and where people could come together to share knowledge and skills. The rancher was hesitant at first. He had never imagined his ranch being more than a place for work and home. The idea of inviting the community in, of opening up his life to strangers, felt overwhelming. But the billionaire encouraged him gently. "You've already made a difference in one person's life," he said. "Imagine how many more lives could be touched if you shared what you have, if you showed others how to care, how to work hard, and how to live with integrity. You have the chance to create something lasting." The rancher thought about it carefully. He realized that accepting this opportunity didn't take away from his independence or humility. It was a way to extend his values, to show that courage, honesty, and hard work could create more than just personal success. It could inspire a community. Slowly, he agreed, and plans began to take shape. Over the next several weeks, work on the ranch shifted to accommodate this new vision. Workers built new paths, set up learning areas, and made spaces for visitors. The rancher supervised carefully, ensuring that the changes enhanced the land without compromising its natural balance. He also made sure the animals were comfortable and safe during the construction. Every step was deliberate, every decision made with care. At the same time, the rancher's relationship with the billionaire grew stronger. They spent long hours discussing strategies, sharing stories, and reflecting on life. The billionaire would often ask about the rancher's family, his past, and what had shaped him into the person he was. The rancher spoke openly, sharing memories of growing up on the land, of the lessons learned from hard work, and of the pride he felt in maintaining his independence while caring for his animals and his community. The billionaire was fascinated. He had met many successful people in his life, but few with the same grounded, authentic perspective. He realized that true impact wasn't measured in money or power alone, but in the ability to inspire, to protect, and to uplift others through one's actions. The rancher embodied that in a way that was rare and remarkable. As the weeks turned into months, the rancher began to see tangible results from the projects they were implementing. The land was more productive, the animals healthier, and the community began to take notice. Families visited the ranch, children learned about farming, and young people were inspired by the work ethic and courage of the rancher. Local schools began to organize field trips, seeing the ranch as not only a working farm but a place of learning and inspiration. The rancher, however, remained modest. He didn't see himself as extraordinary or as a public figure. He continued to work alongside his employees, fixing fences, feeding animals, and tending crops. Yet his influence grew quietly. People admired his humility, his consistency, and his dedication. They saw someone who had acted selflessly in a moment of crisis, and who now continued to act selflessly every day in his work and in his community. One evening, as the sun set over the rolling fields, the rancher and the billionaire walked through the property. The air was warm and fragrant with the scent of grass and soil. The rancher reflected on how far things had come, and how the unexpected encounter on the road had changed everything. "I never imagined life could turn out like this," he said softly. "I just helped a man when he needed it. That was all I thought about. I didn't think it would lead to this." The billionaire smiled, understanding. "That's the thing about courage and kindness. You act without expectation, and yet it creates ripples that reach far beyond what you can see. You saved my life, but in doing so, you've touched countless others. Look around you. What we've built here, what we're building together. It's all because you acted with integrity and bravery." The rancher nodded, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. He realized that life wasn't about chasing wealth or recognition. It was about making choices that mattered, about living with values, and about using opportunities to do good when they arose. The changes on the ranch weren't just physical improvements. They were symbols of the power of selflessness, courage, and collaboration. As the community began to engage with the ranch more, the rancher noticed something remarkable. Children asked questions not just about farming but about life, about courage, responsibility, and doing the right thing. Parents expressed gratitude, not just for the educational opportunities but for the example set by someone who had acted selflessly. The rancher realized that his simple life, once confined to the boundaries of the ranch, was now touching hearts and minds far beyond what he had ever imagined. The billionaire continued to support the rancher, offering guidance and resources but never imposing his own will. He respected the rancher's independence, understanding that the true value of their collaboration came from mutual respect and shared vision. He reminded the rancher that the impact of their work would last long after they were gone, leaving a legacy built on courage, integrity, and the willingness to help others. One day, a local reporter visited the ranch, curious about the story behind the transformation. The rancher welcomed them but stayed humble. He spoke honestly about the crash, the man he had rescued, and the changes that had followed. He emphasized the importance of kindness and bravery, and how small actions could lead to big consequences. His words resonated with many, spreading the story of how courage and selflessness could transform lives. Despite the attention, the rancher never let it affect his character. He remained grounded, focused on his animals, his land, and the people he cared for. He understood that recognition was fleeting, but the impact of actions taken with integrity could endure forever. Over time, the rancher saw the results of his decisions unfold in ways he hadn't anticipated. Young people from the community began showing interest in farming and caring for the land. Local schools collaborated to create programs focused on responsibility, teamwork, and compassion. Families visited the ranch not just for the animals, but to witness the values it represented: courage, humility, and the importance of helping others. The rancher realized that this was the true reward. It wasn't money, fame, or acknowledgement. It was knowing that his actions, combined with opportunity and support, could create a ripple effect, touching lives and inspiring others to act with integrity and bravery. Late one night, as the rancher sat alone on the porch looking at the stars, he thought about the journey that had brought him here. From the moment he ran toward the crash, risking his own safety to save a stranger, to the changes unfolding across the ranch and the community, he saw a pattern, a simple truth about life. Courage and kindness, when combined with opportunity, could create more than anyone imagined. He thought about the man he had saved and the bond that had formed between them. It wasn't just gratitude, it was a shared understanding of what it meant to act selflessly, to work hard, and to create positive change. That connection had transformed his life in ways he could never have planned. And so the rancher continued his work, day after day, quietly building something lasting. He knew that challenges would continue to come, that not every moment would be easy, but he felt prepared. He had learned that acting with courage, integrity, and compassion could change not only one life but the lives of many. And that knowledge gave him confidence, purpose, and peace. The ranch had changed, but the rancher had not. He remained humble, honest, and grounded. He understood that life's most profound lessons often came from ordinary moments, moments of choice, moments of courage, moments of selflessness. And he knew that one simple act, saving a man from a car crash, had set in motion a story far larger than he could have imagined. Months passed, and the ranch continued to change in ways the rancher had never imagined. The improvements were not just physical, though the barns were sturdier, the fences repaired, and the fields more productive than ever. The true transformation was in the way the ranch connected with the community. Families came to visit, children learned about animals and farming, and young people began to see the value of hard work, patience, and responsibility. The rancher watched all of this quietly, never seeking recognition, yet feeling a quiet pride in what had grown from a single, courageous act. The billionaire continued to support the rancher, offering guidance, resources, and encouragement, but he never imposed his will. He respected the rancher's independence, knowing that the success of the projects depended on the rancher's values and decisions. Every choice the rancher made, whether it was about land, animals, or people, reflected his integrity and vision. The billionaire marveled at how someone so ordinary in appearance could have such extraordinary character. One day, as the rancher walked through the fields, he noticed children from the community gathered near the barn. They were learning about planting crops, feeding animals, and taking care of the land. The rancher smiled, observing the curiosity in their eyes, the eagerness to learn, and the respect they showed for the work being done. He realized that the ripple of his actions had reached far beyond what he had expected. It was not just the man he had saved who had been affected. It was the entire community and perhaps even future generations. The rancher reflected on how life had changed since that day on the road. He remembered the crash vividly, the fear, the urgency, the decision to run toward danger instead of away from it. At the time, it had seemed like a simple choice, a natural reaction to help someone in need. He had never thought about the consequences, the attention, or the opportunities that might follow. He had acted out of instinct and compassion, and yet, that single act had reshaped his life in ways he could never have imagined. He thought about the man he had rescued, the billionaire, who had become more than just a friend or supporter. He had become a partner in vision, someone who recognized courage and kindness and knew how to amplify it. Together, they had not only improved the ranch, but had created a space where values could be shared, lessons could be learned, and lives could be touched. The rancher understood that the impact of his actions was no longer limited to his own family or property. It was becoming a legacy. As the days went by, more people came to the ranch. Teachers brought students for field trips, families came to learn about farming, and young adults sought advice on hard work and responsibility. The rancher welcomed them all with the same humility and honesty he had shown throughout his life. He spoke plainly, shared his experiences, and encouraged others to act with courage and kindness in their own lives. People admired him not because of wealth or fame, but because of his integrity, bravery, and the quiet strength he displayed every day. The rancher also took time to reflect on the lessons he had learned. He realized that true heroism often goes unnoticed, that small acts of kindness can create ripple effects far beyond what anyone can see, and that the choices made in moments of fear or urgency can define a person's life and the lives of others. He understood that helping others without expectation of reward was not only a moral choice but a powerful force for change. One evening, as the sun set behind the rolling hills, the rancher and the billionaire walked through the property together. The air was calm, filled with the sounds of animals settling for the night and the soft rustle of the wind through the fields. The rancher paused to look around, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. "I never thought helping one man could lead to all of this," he said quietly. The billionaire nodded, understanding. "It wasn't just about saving me," he said. "It was about who you are. Your courage, your integrity, your humility, they created this. One act of bravery can change a life, and in your case, it changed many lives. That's the power of selflessness." The rancher smiled, humbled by the words. He didn't think of himself as extraordinary. He had only acted when needed, as he had always done in his life. Yet he now saw the impact of that choice. The ranch thriving, the community learning and growing, and the example set for future generations. It was a reminder that life often rewards those who act with courage and kindness, even when they least expect it. Over time, the rancher began to involve his family more in the work and the projects. They helped teach children about the animals, guided visitors through the fields, and participated in community programs. It became a family effort, a shared responsibility, and a source of pride. The rancher realized that his actions had inspired not only the community, but also his own family, instilling values of courage, honesty, and compassion that would carry on for generations. The community in turn grew closer to the rancher. People respected him not only for what he had done in the moment of the crash, but for the consistent way he lived his life afterward. They saw someone who worked hard, cared deeply, and acted with integrity, and they began to mirror those values in their own lives. The rancher had become a quiet leader, not through authority or wealth, but through example. One day the billionaire visited and suggested expanding the community programs even further. "You've already made a difference," he said, "but there's potential to reach more people. Imagine creating scholarships, workshops, or mentorship programs. Your story can inspire not just this town, but many others." The rancher considered this carefully. He had never sought recognition, and he did not want to change who he was. But he realized that using the opportunity to help more people did not compromise his values. It was simply an extension of the life he had always lived, working hard, helping others, and acting with integrity. Slowly, he agreed, and they began planning new programs to expand the reach of the ranch's influence. As the months went on, the rancher saw tangible results. More children visited, more families became involved, and the programs grew in size and impact. Local schools partnered with the ranch, community leaders supported initiatives, and young people found inspiration and guidance. The rancher watched all of this quietly, never seeking praise, yet feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. He understood that true reward came from seeing others grow, learn, and act with courage and kindness. Late one evening, as the rancher sat alone on the porch looking at the stars, he reflected on the journey that had brought him here. He thought about the crash, the fear, the urgency, and the choice to act without hesitation. He realized that it had been a turning point, a moment that had set in motion a series of events beyond anything he could have imagined. One act of courage had grown into a legacy of kindness, impact, and inspiration. He thought about the lives he had touched, the children learning from his example, the families visiting the ranch, and the community programs that were beginning to flourish. And he thought about the billionaire, who had recognized the value of his character and helped him amplify it. But above all, he thought about the importance of integrity, humility, and selflessness, the principles that had guided him through life and through that one moment on the road. The rancher understood that life was full of unexpected opportunities, moments where courage and kindness could create lasting change. He realized that anyone could make a difference, not through wealth or status, but through simple acts of bravery and care, and he felt a profound sense of gratitude for the chance to act, for the lives he had touched, and for the people who had supported him along the way. As the rancher looked out over the fields, the animals moving quietly in the fading light, and the community spaces bustling with activity, he knew that this was only the beginning. The legacy of that single act, the decision to save a stranger's life, would continue to grow, inspiring future generations and creating ripples that extended far beyond his imagination. The rancher smiled softly, understanding that true heroism often goes unnoticed, that courage and kindness are their own reward, and that one person's actions can indeed change the world in unexpected ways. He returned to his home feeling peace, fulfillment, and a renewed sense of purpose. The ranch was no longer just a place of work. It was a symbol of integrity, courage, and the power of selflessness. And in that quiet, simple life surrounded by land, animals, and community, the rancher realized that he had discovered something far greater than fame or wealth. He had discovered the true impact of a life lived with heart, courage, and kindness, a life that could touch others, inspire them, and create a legacy that would endure long after he was gone. The story of the rancher, the man he had rescued, and the community they nurtured together became a reminder to all who heard it. Sometimes, one brave act done without expectation can change not just one life but many lives, leaving a mark that lasts for generations. And so, the rancher continued his work each day, humble, grounded, and focused on what truly mattered, caring for his land, his animals, his community, and living a life guided by courage, compassion, and integrity. The world had changed because he acted, and he knew that the ripples of that single moment would continue to spread far into the future.